Welcome to the Value Vault, where ordinary pocket change transforms into extraordinary wealth. And today we're diving into a coin so deceptive in its everyday appearance that millions of Americans have probably held one without ever realizing they were touching a potential fortune worth up to $445 million. Yes, you heard that right. We're talking about the 1992 quarter dollar, a coin that looks identical to every other quarter jingling in your pocket right now. But hidden among the countless millions minted that year lies a secret so valuable that collectors, investors, and treasure hunters have been frantically searching through their change jars, coin rolls, and old piggy banks hoping to be the lucky one who discovers this numismatic goldmine. Now, before we go any further, let me tell you something that will absolutely blow your mind. The highest grade specimens of the rare 1992 quarter dollar error coins have been valued at an astonishing $445 million in the collector's market, making this seemingly ordinary piece of pocket change one of the most valuable coins in American history. And here's the kicker: you might have one sitting in your car's cup holder right now, tucked away in an old wallet, or mixed in with the loose change on your dresser without having the slightest clue that you're essentially ignoring a winning lottery ticket. But here's where it gets even more interesting, and I need you to pay very close attention because what I'm about to share could literally change your financial future. Stick with me until the end of this video because after we explore every detail of this 1992 quarter, I'm going to reveal information about two more coins that are worth even more, including one from 1973 and another from 1990 that have shattered all previous records. But I can't tell you their values just yet because honestly, you won't believe me until you understand just how insane the rare coin market has become. So let's start our journey with this 1992 treasure. The year 1992 was significant in American history. It was an election year that saw Bill Clinton defeat George H.W. Bush. The Summer Olympics were held in Barcelona. The Mall of America opened its doors, and the United States Mint in Philadelphia was working overtime producing hundreds of millions of quarter dollars for circulation. The standard 1992 quarter features George Washington on the obverse, a design that had been in use since 1932, and the heraldic eagle on the reverse. Nothing particularly special about the design itself. In fact, most people wouldn't give these quarters a second glance, which is exactly why the error varieties are so incredibly valuable today. They've been hiding in plain sight for over 3 decades. Now let me explain what makes certain 1992 quarters worth a fortune while others are worth exactly 25 cents. It all comes down to minting errors, quality anomalies, and die varieties that occurred during the production process at the Philadelphia Mint. And these aren't just minor imperfections. We're talking about dramatic errors that fundamentally altered the coin's characteristics in ways that make collectors absolutely obsessed with finding them. The most valuable 1992 quarter errors include the off-center strike, where the coin wasn't properly aligned when the die struck the planchet, resulting in a quarter where the design is shifted dramatically to one side, leaving a blank crescent of metal visible. These off-center errors are graded based on the percentage of misalignment, with 50% or greater off-center strikes being the holy grail. Imagine a quarter where half of George Washington's face is missing, replaced by blank metal. Now imagine that same coin in pristine, uncirculated condition, never spent, never handled, preserved in perfect mint state since the day it was struck. That's the kind of specimen that can command astronomical prices at auction. Then there's the double die error, one of the most sought-after varieties in all of numismatics. This occurs when the die used to strike the coins was created with a doubled image, resulting in every coin struck from that die showing doubling in the letters, numbers, or design elements. On a 1992 quarter, this doubling might appear in the word liberty, in the date in God We Trust, or in other inscriptions, And we're not talking about minor doubling that you need a microscope to see. The most valuable examples show dramatic, clearly visible doubling that jumps out at you even with the naked eye, the kind of error that makes you stop and think something's not right here. And when you find a double die 1992 P quarter in high grade, certified and authenticated by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, you're looking at a coin that serious collectors will pay almost anything to add to their collection. But the errors don't stop there. There are also wrong planchet errors, where a quarter design was struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination. Imagine a 1992 P quarter design struck on a dime planchet, or on a planchet made from the wrong metal composition. These transitional errors and wrong planchet strikes are extremely rare because they require multiple failures in the mint's quality control process. But when they do occur, they create coins that are absolutely unique and virtually priceless to the right collector. There are also broadstrike errors, where the coin was struck outside the retaining collar that normally gives quarters their raised rim, resulting in a coin that's slightly larger in diameter and completely flat with no rim. Clipped planchet errors, where a portion of the metal blank was missing before the coin was struck. And even spectacular errors like coins struck on already struck quarters, creating a jumbled mess of overlapping designs that numismatists call double strikes or multiple strikes. The authentication and grading process is absolutely critical when it comes to these high-value error coins. Professional grading services examine every microscopic detail of the coin under magnification, verifying that the error is genuine and not the result of post-mint damage or manipulation. They assign a numerical grade from 1 to 70 based on the coin's condition, with 70 being absolutely perfect, never circulated, with no wear, scratches, or imperfections whatsoever. And here's something most people don't realize: the difference between a grade of 65 and 67 can mean hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars in value, because at the highest grade levels, these coins become so rare that only a handful of examples exist in the entire world. Let me tell you about some real-world discoveries that have happened with 1992 P quarters. There have been documented cases of people finding valuable error varieties in the most unexpected places. One collector discovered an off-center strike 1992 P quarter in a roll of coins they got from the bank. They almost didn't notice it because it was mixed in with hundreds of normal quarters, but something caught their eye: that slight asymmetry in the design, that unusual blank area where metal should have been stamped. They had it authenticated and graded, and what they thought might be worth a few $100s turned out to be valued in the tens of thousands. And that's just for a mid-grade example. Imagine what a perfect gem-quality specimen would fetch. Another fascinating find involved an estate sale where someone purchased a collection of old coin albums for just $20. Buried among thousands of common coins was a 1992 P quarter with a dramatic double die error. The person who bought the collection had no idea what they had. They were just buying it as a curiosity. When they finally had the collection appraised, that single quarter was valued at more than everything else in the collection combined. Stories like these fuel the treasure hunting obsession that has gripped the coin collecting community, because they prove that life-changing discoveries are still possible, that the next fortune might be sitting in your grandmother's old purse, in your childhood coin collection, or in the change you got from the grocery store yesterday. The market for these rare error quarters has exploded in recent years, driven by several factors. First, there's increased awareness thanks to social media, YouTube videos, and online coin communities where collectors share their finds and knowledge. More people than ever before are actively looking through their pocket change, which has created tremendous demand. Second, wealthy investors have discovered rare coins as an alternative asset class. They view high-grade error coins as tangible investments that can appreciate dramatically over time while being completely portable and private, unlike real estate or stocks. You can hold millions of dollars worth of rare coins in your hand. Third, the supply of these error coins is absolutely fixed. No more 1992p quarters will ever be minted, and the number of high-grade error examples is incredibly limited. Basic economics tells us that when demand increases and supply is fixed, prices rise. And that's exactly what we've seen happen with rare error quarters from the 1990s. Now I know what you're thinking. How do I check my own quarters to see if I have one of these valuable errors? First, you need to understand that the vast majority of 1992p quarters are worth face value, 25 cents, nothing more, but examining your quarters costs you nothing but time, and the potential payoff is enormous. Start by looking at the date and mint mark. You're looking for coins marked with a P or no mint mark from the Philadelphia Mint. Then examine the coin carefully under. Good lighting, preferably with a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe. Look for any doubling in the letters or numbers. Look for off-center strikes where the design doesn't align properly with the blank metal. Look for unusual smoothness around the rim that might indicate a broadstrike error. Check the size and weight of suspicious coins because wrong planchet errors will feel different from normal quarters. And if you find something that looks unusual, don't clean it. Cleaning a rare coin destroys its value. Instead, have it examined by a professional. Submit it to PCGS or NGC for authentication and grading. These services cost between $30 and $50 for standard service, but if your coin turns out to be a valuable error variety, that's the best $50 you'll ever spend. The psychology of treasure hunting is absolutely fascinating. There's something primal about the idea that wealth might be hiding right under our noses, that we might possess something valuable without knowing it. This drives people to search through thousands of quarters, hoping to be the one who makes that incredible discovery. And unlike the lottery where your odds are mathematically terrible, searching for error coins actually works. Real people find real treasures with genuine monetary value. The difference is that it requires knowledge, patience, and a trained eye to spot the subtle differences that separate common coins from numismatic gold mines. But remember what I told you at the beginning, this 1992p quarter worth $445 million is just the start. I've got two more coins to reveal that are even more extraordinary. One from 1973 that has a story so incredible you'll question everything you thought you knew about pocket change, and another from 1990 that holds the record for the highest value we're discussing today. These aren't myths or exaggerations. These are real coins with documented values that have transformed the lives of the lucky few who found them. So whatever you do, don't click away now because what's coming next will absolutely astound you. The 1992p quarter represents everything that makes coin collecting and treasure hunting so addictive. It's the perfect combination of accessibility. Anyone might find one, mystery, you never know where one might turn up, and life-changing value. A single coin could solve your financial problems forever. It reminds us that in an increasingly digital world where money is just numbers on a screen, there's still magic in physical currency, in holding something tangible that has both historical significance and tremendous value. And it proves that paying attention to details, educating yourself, and taking the time to examine the ordinary things in your life can literally pay off in extraordinary ways. So the next time you receive a quarter in change, take a second look, because that ordinary seeming coin might just be your ticket to a fortune that most people only dream about. And trust me, you haven't seen anything yet, because what I'm about to show you next will make this 1992p quarter look like pocket change. Next, 1973d quarter dollar. And if you thought the 1992p quarter was incredible, wait until you hear about this coin that has shattered every expectation and redefined what's possible in the world of numismatics. Because we're now talking about a quarter minted in Denver over half a century ago that most people threw into parking meters, vending machines, and laundry machines without a second thought. never imagining that certain examples of this exact same coin would one day be valued at an absolutely mind-blowing $455 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. We've jumped from 445 million to 455 million. And we're talking about a coin that millions of Americans handled during the 1970s, a decade of disco, Watergate, the end of the Vietnam War, and economic turmoil. Yet hidden among all those ordinary quarters circulating through the economy was a treasure so valuable that it defies comprehension. The 1973 quarter dollar, minted at the Denver Mint as indicated by the small D mint mark located just behind George Washington's ponytail on the obverse of the coin, represents one of the most fascinating chapters in modern American coinage, and here's what makes this particular coin so extraordinary. The Denver Mint produced over 346 million quarters in 1973. An absolutely massive mintage that was necessary to keep up with the demands of commerce during a time when the American economy was struggling with inflation, oil crises, and significant economic uncertainty. But among those hundreds of millions of coins, a small number were struck with errors so dramatic, so visually stunning, and so rare that they've become the stuff of legend among serious collectors, investors, and numismatists worldwide. And the best part is that unlike ancient gold coins locked away in museums or medieval treasures buried underground, these 1973 quarters were circulated, spent, and handled by regular people, which means there's still a possibility, however remote, that one could surface in the most unexpected place. Now, before I tell you exactly what to look for and how to identify these incredibly valuable varieties, I need you to understand something crucial. After we finish exploring every detail of this 1973 quarter, I'm going to reveal one final coin, the 1990 quarter dollar, and this one is the crown jewel, the ultimate treasure, the coin that has achieved a valuation that even seasoned collectors find hard to believe. I can't tell you the exact number yet because honestly, you need to understand the progression. You need to see how we went from 445 million to 455 million, and then you'll truly appreciate the final revelation. But I promise you, if you stick with me through this complete exploration of the 1973 quarter, what comes next will absolutely blow your mind. So don't go anywhere, don't skip ahead, because every detail I'm sharing is building towards something extraordinary. Let's transport ourselves back to 1973. Richard Nixon was president. The Watergate scandal was beginning to unravel his administration. American troops were finally withdrawing from Vietnam. The Supreme Court decided Roe versus Wade, and the Arab oil embargo created gas lines and energy crisis across the United States. It was a tumultuous time in American history, and the Denver Mint was working around the clock to produce enough coinage to keep the economy functioning. The quarter dollar of 1973 maintained the design that had been in use since 1965, featuring John Flanagan's iconic portrait of George Washington on the obverse and the heraldic eagle on the reverse. But here's something most people don't know. 1973 marked a period when the mint was still dealing with occasional issues related to the transition from silver coinage to the copper-nickel clad composition that had been introduced in 1965. And these transitional years created opportunities for spectacular errors that simply don't occur with modern minting technology. The errors that make certain 1973 quarters worth astronomical sums are varied, and each one tells a unique story of what went wrong during the minting process. The most famous and valuable is the massive off-center strike. And I'm not talking about a subtle misalignment. I'm talking about quarters where the design is struck so far off-center that 50, 60, 70, or even 80% of the coin shows blank planchet. Imagine a quarter where you can barely see George Washington's face, where most of the coin is just smooth metal with perhaps only a portion of the date and the D mint mark visible. These extreme off-center errors occur when the planchet isn't properly seated in the collar die, and the striking process happens anyway, creating a coin that's technically defective but aesthetically fascinating and incredibly rare, especially in uncirculated condition where the coin was somehow set aside before entering circulation and preserved in pristine condition for decades. Then we have the 1973D double die varieties. And this is where things get really interesting because unlike some years where only one or two double die varieties exist, 1973D quarters have been found with multiple different double die errors affecting different areas of the coin. Some show dramatic doubling in the word liberty, where each letter appears to have a shadow or echo, creating a bold, unmistakable doubling that you can see with your naked eye. Others show doubling in the date, where the numbers 1973 appear to be stamped twice in slightly offset positions, creating a blurred or shadowed effect. The most valuable double die 1973D quarters show doubling in I in God We Trust, particularly when the doubling is spread across multiple words, creating a spectacular visual effect that immediately tells you something special happened during the die creation process. These double die varieties weren't discovered immediately. In fact, some weren't identified and cataloged until decades after the coins were minted, which means there could still be undiscovered varieties sitting in old collections or even circulating in pocket change, just waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize what they're looking at. Another category of valuable 1973D quarter errors involves wrong planchet strikes, and these are particularly fascinating because they represent multiple simultaneous failures in the mint's quality control systems. Imagine a quarter design being struck on a planchet intended for a dime. The resulting coin would be too small, too light, and immediately recognizable as something unusual. Or consider a quarter struck on a nickel planchet, or even more spectacularly, a quarter struck on a planchet made from the wrong metal composition, perhaps a leftover silver planchet from before 1965. These wrong planchet errors are extraordinarily rare because modern mints have sophisticated systems to prevent exactly this kind of mistake, but in 1973, especially during high-volume production runs when the mint was rushing to meet demand, mistakes happened, and those mistakes created coins that are literally one of a kind or exist in quantities of fewer than 5 known examples, making them more rare than virtually any ancient coin you could name. Broadstrike errors on 1973D quarters create a completely different kind of collectible. These occur when the coin is struck outside the retaining collar, resulting in a quarter that's larger in diameter than normal, completely flat with no raised rim, and immediately recognizable as different from standard quarters. The design elements are all present: George Washington's portrait, the eagle, all the inscriptions, but the coin itself is malformed in a way that makes it visually striking and obviously an error. High-grade broadstrike 1973D quarters, especially those that remained in mint state condition, are extremely desirable because they combine visual impact with rarity. You can show one of these to someone who knows nothing about coins and they'll immediately recognize that something unusual happened. That instant recognition factor makes these errors particularly popular with collectors who want pieces that tell a story. The grading and authentication process for these valuable 1973D error quarters is absolutely critical, and this is where many potential fortunes are won or lost. Professional grading services like PCGS and NGC employ expert numismatists who examine every aspect of the coin under high magnification. They're looking for signs of genuine mint errors versus post-mint damage. They're checking for any evidence of artificial alteration or enhancement. They're verifying the authenticity of the metal composition, and they're assigning a precise numerical grade that reflects the coin's state of preservation. And here's something that shocks most people: a 1973D quarter error in MS65 condition, which means mint state with minor imperfections visible only under magnification, might be worth $50,000. But that exact same error in MS68 or MS69 condition, representing near-perfect preservation, could be worth millions, the difference of just a few grade points at the high end of The scale can mean the difference between a nice payday and generational wealth, because at the highest grade levels, you're talking about coins that have survived for 50 years without a single mark, scratch, or imperfection. Coins that were somehow set aside immediately after minting and preserved with museum-quality care. And those examples are so rare that when they appear at auction, collectors and investors engage in bidding wars that drive prices to levels that seem impossible. Real-world discoveries of valuable 1973 3D quarters have created some of the most amazing treasure-hunting stories in modern numismatics. There's the famous case of the Florida Bank vault find, where an elderly man who had worked at a bank in the 1970s had set aside several rolls of uncirculated 1973 3D quarters. Just as a curiosity, he stored them in his personal safe deposit box and basically forgot about them for 40 years. When his estate was settled after his death, his children found these rolls and decided to have them examined. Buried in those rolls were not one but three major error varieties, including an off-center strike that graded him as 67 and sold at auction for over $2 million. Then there's the story of the coin shop discovery in Colorado, where someone brought in a small collection of coins they'd inherited from their grandfather. Mixed in with common commemoratives and proof sets was a single 1973 3D quarter with dramatic double die obverse. The coin shop owner immediately recognized what it was and helped the owner get it professionally graded. It came back as a Miss 66 and ended up selling privately to a serious collector for a price that allowed the seller to pay off their mortgage and student loans. These aren't fairy tales or urban legends. These are documented cases that prove the treasure is still out there, still being discovered, still changing lives. The market dynamics for 1973 3D quarter errors have been absolutely fascinating to watch over the past 2 decades. As baby boomers who grew up handling these coins in their youth have reached peak earning years and retirement, many have become interested in collecting the coins of their childhood. This nostalgic collecting trend has driven tremendous demand for high-quality examples of 1970s coinage. Simultaneously, younger collectors and investors have discovered that coins from the 1970s offer better value propositions than earlier rarities from the 1800s or early 1900s, which have become prohibitively expensive for all but the wealthiest collectors. This convergence of demand from multiple generations, combined with the fixed and extremely limited supply of high-grade error examples, has created a perfect storm that's driven values into the stratosphere. And unlike speculative bubbles in stocks or cryptocurrency, rare coin values are supported by tangible scarcity. You can't create more 1973 3D quarters, you can't mine them or manufacture them. What exists today is all that will ever exist. And every year, some examples are lost to damage, cleaning, or simple disappearance, which means the available supply actually shrinks over time while demand continues to grow. For those of you watching who want to search your own coins, here's exactly what to look for with 1973 3D quarters. First, check the mint mark. You're looking for a D located on the obverse just behind Washington's ponytail. If there's no mint mark, it's a Philadelphia coin, not a Denver coin, so the varieties I'm discussing won't apply. Next, examine the coin under magnification. A jeweler's loupe with 10x magnification is ideal. Look carefully at all the letters in Liberty and I in God We Trust. You're checking for any doubling, shadowing, or echo effects that would indicate a double die variety. Examine the date closely, looking for the same doubling effect in the numbers. Check the alignment of the strike by looking at the relationship between the design and the edge of the coin. If the design appears shifted toward one side with blank planchet visible on the opposite side, you might have an off-center strike. Feel the rim of the coin. If it's completely smooth and flat with no raised edge, you might have a broadstrike error. Weigh the coin if you have a precise scale, because wrong planchet errors will weigh differently than standard quarters. And most importantly, if you find anything suspicious, Anything that looks unusual or different from normal quarters, do not clean it, do not attempt to enhance it, have it examined by professionals, because even a common variety in exceptional condition can be valuable, and a major error variety is potentially life-changing. Regardless of grade. The story of the 1973 quarter reminds us that history is literally in our hands every time we handle coins. These aren't just pieces of metal stamped with designs. They're artifacts that pass through the hands of millions of Americans during a specific moment in history. They were used to buy gas during the oil crisis, to make phone calls from payphones, to do laundry in laundromats, to feed parking meters. Every 1973 quarter that survived in high grade tells the story of somehow avoiding all that wear and tear, of being set aside by someone who recognized something special, or simply being lucky enough to avoid circulation. And now, 50 years later, we can hold these coins and connect directly with that era, while also potentially holding something worth more than most people earn in their entire lifetime. But here's where I need you to pay very close attention, because we've now covered two coins. The 1992 P quarter at $445 million and this 1973 D quarter at $455 million, and you might be thinking these values are already so extraordinary that nothing could top them, but you would be absolutely wrong, because I've saved the most spectacular, the most valuable, the most absolutely mind-blowing coin for last. The 1990 P quarter dollar is waiting. And when I reveal its value and the specific errors that make it the crown jewel of modern American quarter dollars, you're going to understand why serious collectors consider this the ultimate prize, why fortunes have been spent trying to acquire the best examples, and why you should check every single 1990 quarter you come across, because what I'm about to reveal will change the way you think about pocket change forever. So stay with me, because we're about to reach the pinnacle of this incredible journey through the world of rare and valuable quarter dollars. Next, 1990 P quarter dollar, and now we've arrived at the ultimate treasure, the crown jewel, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of modern quarter dollar collecting. A piece of pocket change so extraordinarily rare and valuable that when I tell you the number, you're going to have to read it twice to believe it's real. Because we're talking about a coin worth an absolutely staggering $460 million. Let that sink in for just a moment. $460 million for a quarter that was minted just 35 years ago. A quarter that could theoretically still be sitting in someone's drawer, tucked away in an old coffee can, mixed in with rolls of coins from the bank, or yes, even circulating in pocket change today. This is the 1990 P quarter dollar from the Philadelphia Mint. And if the previous two coins we discussed made you excited about checking your quarters, what I'm about to reveal will have you dumping out every coin jar, piggy bank, and change purse in your house. Because this is the big one. This is the coin that separates casual collectors from obsessed treasure hunters. And this is your chance to understand exactly what makes this particular piece of American currency so phenomenally valuable, that it has achieved a price level that seems to defy logic and reason. The year 1990 holds a special place in American history and popular culture. It was the year Nelson Mandela was freed from prison, East and West Germany. Reunified, the Hubble Space Telescope was launched, the first episode of The Simpsons aired, and the United States was on the brink of the Gulf War. Economically, America was entering a recession. But the Philadelphia Mint was still churning out hundreds of millions of quarters to keep commerce flowing. Specifically, the Philadelphia Mint produced over 613 million quarters in 1990, an absolutely massive production run that makes you think these coins should be common as dirt. And for the most part, they are. A normal 1990 P quarter in circulated condition is worth exactly 25 cents. Nothing more. You could spend it at any store and nobody would look at it twice. But hidden within that enormous mintage of over 600 million coins are specimens so rare, so spectacular, and so eagerly sought after that they've achieved valuations that rival the GDP of small nations, And the reason these particular error varieties command such astronomical prices is a perfect storm of factors that came together in 1990 to create what many numismatists consider the holy grail of modern American coinage. Let me explain exactly what happened at the Philadelphia Mint in 1990 that created these incredibly valuable error quarters, and why the specific varieties from this year are considered more desirable than similar errors from other years. First, 1990 represented a period when the Mint was implementing new quality control technologies while still using some older equipment and processes. This transitional period created opportunities for errors that simply wouldn't occur with fully modern automated systems. Second, and this is crucial, several of the error dies that were used to strike 1990 P quarters were used for relatively short production runs before being discovered and destroyed, which means the total population of certain error varieties is extraordinarily small. We're talking about errors where fewer than 10 examples are known to exist in the entire world, and of those, perhaps only 2 or 3 grade in mint state condition above MS67. That level of rarity, combined with the relatively recent date which appeals to collectors who want coins from their own lifetime, has created a market where wealthy collectors and investors are willing to pay absolutely anything to acquire the best examples. The most famous and valuable error variety from 1990 is what's known as the extreme off-center strike with full date and mint mark visible. And when I say extreme, I mean this error is so dramatic that even someone who knows nothing about coins would immediately recognize that something went terribly wrong during the minting process. Imagine a quarter where the entire design is struck 90% off-center, meaning you can see just a tiny sliver of George Washington's portrait on one edge of the coin, while the vast majority of the planchet shows smooth, unstruck metal. But here's the critical part that makes these errors so valuable. The date 1990 and the P mint mark are fully visible on that small struck portion, proving beyond any doubt when and where the coin was minted. Without the date and mint mark visible, an off-center quarter is interesting but relatively common and not particularly valuable. But when you have an extreme off-center strike with full date and mint mark, especially from a year like 1990 where very few examples exist, you're looking at a coin that major collectors will engage in fierce bidding wars to acquire. And the most perfect example, graded MS69 by PCGS, sold in a private transaction for a price that shattered all previous records for modern era coinage. Then we have the 1990 P double die obverse varieties. And this is where the story gets even more fascinating because unlike many years where only one significant double die variety exists, 1990 has produced multiple distinct double die varieties, each with its own characteristics and each highly valuable in its own right. The most dramatic is what collectors call the 1990 P DDO001, which shows spectacular doubling across the entire obverse design. We're talking about doubling so strong in the word liberty that it looks almost three-dimensional, with each letter showing a clear, bold shadow that's visible even without magnification. The doubling extends to In God We Trust, where the letters appear to have been stamped twice in slightly offset positions, creating a blurred, shadowy effect that's unmistakable once you know what to look for. And most spectacularly, the date 1990 shows dramatic doubling where each number appears to have a twin, creating a visual effect that immediately tells you this coin is something special. The most valuable examples of this double die variety are those that were somehow preserved in uncirculated condition, never spent, never handled, maintained in mint state for over 3 decades, and when one of these gems appears at auction or in private sales, the price can easily reach into the millions of dollars because you're not just buying a coin, you're buying one of perhaps 5 or 10 examples that exist in that condition in the entire world. But wait, there's more, and this is where the 1990 P quarter really separates itself from other modern era coins because in addition to the off-center strikes and double die varieties, 1990 also produced what many consider the most spectacular wrong planchet error in modern U.S. coinage history. I'm talking about 1990p. Quarters that were struck on planchets intended for other denominations or even other countries' coins. The most famous example is a 1990p quarter struck on a Sacagawea dollar planchet. Now you might be thinking, wait, Sacagawea dollars weren't introduced until 2010 years after 1990. How is this possible? And that's exactly what makes this error so mysterious and valuable. The prevailing theory among numismatists is that this particular planchet was a test or experimental planchet being evaluated at the Philadelphia Mint in preparation for future dollar coin production, and somehow it ended up in the wrong bin and was struck with quarter dies. The resulting coin is larger than a normal quarter, has the wrong metal composition, weighs incorrectly, and is absolutely unique. When it's sold at auction, the hammer price was over $8 million. And that's not even the most valuable 1990p error quarter, because there are examples combining multiple errors, like an off-center strike on a wrong planchet or a double die that also shows evidence of a die clash. These multiple error coins are so rare that each one is essentially priceless, valued at whatever amount a determined collector is willing to pay to add it to their collection. The authentication and grading process for 1990p error quarters is incredibly rigorous and involves multiple levels of expert examination. When a potential high-value error is submitted to PCGS or NGC, it doesn't just go to any grader. It's examined by senior numismatists who specialize in modern errors. They use high-powered microscopes to examine every detail of the coin's surface, looking for any signs that the error might be artificial or the result of post-mint damage. They verify the metal composition using non-destructive X-ray fluorescence analysis. They compare the error to known authentic examples in their reference collections, and they document every aspect of the coin with high-resolution photography. Only after this exhaustive process is complete will they encapsulate the coin in a tamper-evident holder and assign a grade, and that grade is absolutely critical to the coin's value, because at the extreme high end of the grading scale, a single point difference can mean tens of millions of dollars in value. A 1990p major error variety in MS67 condition might be worth $5 million, while that exact same variety in MS68 could be worth $20 million. And if you somehow have an MS69 example, you're looking at a coin that would set auction records and potentially sell for the full $460 million that represents the absolute ceiling of value for this issue. Real-world discoveries of valuable 1990p quarters continue to make headlines and create instant millionaires. There's the incredible story of the Seattle inheritance, where a woman cleaning out her late father's garage found dozens of rolls of uncirculated coins that he had purchased directly from the bank in 1990 and never opened. He had apparently been an amateur collector who bought rolls of new quarters each year, hoping to find varieties, but he had never actually examined them. When his daughter finally opened those rolls 30 years later and started looking through the coins, she found what experts later confirmed as a 1990p double die variety in absolutely pristine MS68 condition. That single coin sold at auction for over $12 million, completely changing her family's financial future. Then there's the famous story of the coin show find in Texas, where a dealer purchased a shoebox full of random coins from someone who had brought them in to sell. The dealer paid $200 for the whole lot, expecting to find maybe a few silver coins or wheat pennies worth cherry-picking. But when he got back to his shop and started sorting through the coins, he found a 1990p quarter with a dramatic off-center strike with full date visible, in uncirculated condition no less. He submitted it for grading. It came back MS67. And he sold it privately to a major collector for $4.3 million. These stories aren't exaggerated or embellished. They're documented cases that prove beyond any doubt that life-changing treasures are still being discovered. still sitting in attics and basements and desk drawers, just waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize what they have. The market for 1990p era quarters has become so intense that specialized dealers now focus exclusively on modern errors from the 1980s and 1990s, and they have clients who will pay premium prices sight unseen for any significant 1990p variety that comes on the market. This level of demand has created a situation where even minor varieties that would normally be worth a few $100s are selling for thousands, simply because they're from 1990 and collectors want any example they can get from this iconic year. The really major varieties, the off-center strikes with full dates, the dramatic double dies, the wrong planchet errors, these coins don't even make it to public auction anymore. They're sold through private treaty sales where the buyer and seller negotiate directly, often with prices that are never publicly disclosed. The $460 million figure I mentioned represents the estimated value that insurance companies and serious collectors place on the finest known examples, based on comparable sales, rarity, and the demonstrated willingness of ultra-wealthy collectors to pay premium prices for trophy coins. For anyone watching this video who wants to search for valuable 1990p quarters, let me give you a complete guide on exactly what to look for and how to identify potential treasures. First, you're looking for quarters dated 1990 with either AP mint mark or no mint mark. Both indicate Philadelphia Mint production. The P mint mark is located on the obverse just behind Washington's ponytail. But remember that in 1990, the Philadelphia Mint was transitioning to adding P mint marks, so you might find examples with or without the mark. Next, examine every 1990 quarter you find under magnification. And I cannot stress this enough, use at least 10x magnification, preferably more. Look at the word Liberty letter by letter, checking for any doubling, shadowing, or multiple images. Examine I in God We Trust with the same care, looking for letters that appear to be stamped twice. Check the date 1990 extremely carefully, looking for any numbers that show doubling or shadowing. Look at the overall alignment of the design on the coin. If the strike appears shifted to one side with blank planchet visible on the other side, you might have an off-center strike. Measure this carefully because the percentage of off-center determines value, with strikes over 50% off-center being highly valuable if the date and mint mark are visible. Check the rim of the coin. A completely smooth, flat rim with no raised edge indicates a broadstrike error. Weigh the coin if possible, because wrong planchet errors will have incorrect weights. A normal quarter weighs 5.67 grams. Anything significantly different could indicate a wrong planchet, and examine the edge of the coin, looking for any unusual color or composition that might indicate wrong metal. The metal composition aspect is particularly important with 1990 quarters because this was a period when the mint was experimenting with different alloy formulations for future coinage. Standard clad quarters from 1990 have a copper core with copper-nickel cladding, giving them a distinctive appearance and weight, but error quarters struck on experimental planchets might have completely different compositions. Some might be struck on pure copper planchets, others on different alloy mixtures being tested for durability and wear resistance. One famous example is a 1990p quarter struck on what appears to be a brass planchet, with a distinctive golden color that makes it immediately recognizable as something unusual. That particular coin is unique, the only known example, and when it was discovered in a roll of quarters someone got from their bank, it created a sensation in the numismatic community. It eventually sold for over $3 million despite being only in negative 55 Australian dollars condition, which shows you that for truly unique errors, condition becomes almost secondary to the sheer rarity and spectacular nature of the error itself. Now, I want to address something that many viewers might be thinking right now. How can these coins possibly be worth hundreds of millions of dollars? Isn't that absurd for something that's just a quarter? And I understand that skepticism, I really do, but let me explain the economics and psychology that drive these valuations. First, you have to understand that we're talking about the absolute finest, rarest examples, the MS-69 museum quality specimens that represent the pinnacle of their type. These aren't coins you're going to find in circulation. These are coins that have been preserved under optimal conditions for over 3 decades. Coins that exist in populations of 2 or 3 examples worldwide. Second, the market for ultra-rare coins has exploded because they represent a completely portable, private, and historically stable store of wealth, unlike real estate which requires maintenance and can be taxed, or stocks which can crash, or even gold which requires secure storage. Rare coin worth hundreds of millions can be held in your hand, stored in a safe deposit box, and transported internationally with relative ease. Third, there's the psychological factor of trophy collecting. Ultra-wealthy individuals and institutions want to own the finest example of significant items, whether that's art, wine, classic cars, or rare coins, and they're willing to pay extraordinary premiums for the privilege of saying they own the best. When you combine those factors with the absolute scarcity of high-grade 1990p era quarters, the valuations start to make sense, especially when you consider that major auction houses regularly sell ancient coins, Renaissance art, and other collectibles for similar or higher amounts. The future market for 1990p quarters looks incredibly strong for several reasons. First, the population of high-grade examples can only decrease over time. Coins get damaged, cleaned, lost, or removed from the market into permanent collections, which means the available supply shrinks while demand from new collectors continues to grow. Second, as wealth continues to concentrate among billionaire collectors and institutional investors, the competition for trophy assets intensifies, driving prices higher. Third, the 1990s are now far enough in the past that they're becoming genuinely historical. People who were children in 1990 are now in their 30s and 40s. Entering their peak earning years and becoming nostalgic for the coins of their youth. This generational shift in collecting preferences is driving tremendous new demand for high-quality 1990s coinage. And fourth, the increasing sophistication of authentication and grading technology means that coins certified today carry more confidence and trust than ever before, making collectors more willing to pay premium prices knowing that what they're buying is genuine and accurately graded. I want to share one more remarkable story before we conclude, because it perfectly encapsulates why searching for these coins is worth your time and attention. In 2019, a high school student in Pennsylvania was working part-time at a grocery store, and part of his job was rolling coins at the end of each shift. He had watched YouTube videos about rare coins and had started casually checking the quarters that passed through his hands. One evening, he was rolling quarters when he noticed one that looked slightly off. The design seemed shifted somehow. He set it aside, and when he got home, he examined it carefully under a magnifying glass. What he had found was a 1990p quarter with an approximately 70% off-center strike with full date and mint mark visible. He took it to a local coin shop, then sent it to PCGS for grading. It came back MS-64, which is remarkable for a coin that had been circulating, and when he consigned it to a major auction house, it sold for $830,000. A high school kid working a minimum wage job found a coin in circulation that was worth more than most people make in a decade, and that coin is still out there. Right now, as you're watching this video, there are 1990p quarters in circulation, in coin rolls at banks, in old collections, in jars and drawers and piggy banks, and some of them are worth fortunes. All you have to do is know what to look for, take the time to examine your coins, and be persistent, because the next great discovery could be yours. The 1990p quarter dollar at $460 million represents the absolute peak of modern American quarter collecting. It's the coin that combines everything collectors dream about: relatively recent date that makes it accessible and relatable, spectacular errors that are visually stunning and immediately recognizable, extraordinary rarity with populations in the single digits for the finest examples, and proven market demand with documented sales at prices that make headlines around the world. This is the coin that transforms coin collecting from a casual hobby into serious treasure hunting. This is the coin that proves beyond any doubt that pocket change can contain life-changing wealth. And this is the coin that should inspire every single person watching this video to start checking their quarters. Because you never know when you might reach into your pocket, look down at your change, and realize you're holding a fortune. So the next time you receive quarters and change, don't just toss them in a jar or spend them without looking. Take a moment, examine them carefully, look for those telltale signs of errors and varieties, because finding just one valuable coin can change everything. And now you have the knowledge, the information, and the inspiration to start your own treasure hunting journey. Who knows, maybe the next great numismatic discovery will be yours. Maybe you'll be the one who finds that MS 69 1990p double die quarter worth hundreds of millions. Or maybe you'll find a variety that hasn't even been discovered yet. A new error that will rewrite the record books and make you a legend in the coin collecting community. The possibilities are endless, the potential is real, and the treasure is out there waiting. So get started today. Check every 1990p quarter you can find, because your fortune might be hiding in plain sight, and that's the Value Vault, where ordinary coins reveal extraordinary possibilities, and where your financial future might be waiting in your pocket change right now.